Okay, let's dive into this. Picture a really stark, deeply unsettling scene. A dictator massacres his own people. The entire world watches the horrifying footage. But then, almost immediately, his phone rings. And who is on the other end? It's a world leader. And they aren't calling to condemn the violence. Nope, they're calling to negotiate a lucrative new trade deal. Now, it sounds exactly like the plot of a cynical political thriller, right? But as our source material today breaks down, this is actually a very real, documented phenomenon. Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a fascinating and honestly pretty sobering guide titled Allies in Atrocity and how citizens can break the cycle. We're going to look strictly at how the machinery of international relations actually operates behind closed doors, and more importantly, the exact methods citizens can use to completely disrupt it.
Now, you might be wondering if the source frames this opening scenario as some grand, shadowy conspiracy theory. Actually, not at all. It presents this as just the standard operating procedure of geopolitics. It's simply a space where morality is completely optional and interest is literally everything. You know, most of us go about our daily lives with absolutely no idea just how deep this transactional nature of global politics really goes. We kind of just assume foreign policy is driven by human rights or shared democratic values. But the source points out a pretty harsh reality. International relations are very often driven entirely by self-interest. But here's the real kicker. The true revelation of this document isn't just that this ruthless system exists. It's that everyday citizens actually hold the power to change it, even if they don't quite realize it yet.
So the crucial point here is understanding the cold, hard logic of realpolitik, or real-world politics. The text explains that on the global stage, it rarely matters what you do. What truly matters is what you control. Are you sitting on vast oil fields? Do you control a critical global trade route? Maybe you offer strategic military bases, or hold nuclear secrets, or command highly influential votes in the UN. If you have something a powerful nation wants, well, you instantly become a protected ally. The official, highly technical term governments put on paper is strategic partnership. But when powerful nations prioritize that strategic control over moral action, ordinary people and human rights observers just call it what it is: complicity.
To really grasp how this works, the source outlines exactly how this systemic complicity plays out repeatedly on the global stage. It's not just a random, isolated incident here or there. It's a deeply entrenched structural pattern. I mean, look at modern history. We see governments arming rebel groups when it serves their immediate interests, only to turn around and relabel those exact same groups as terrorists the second the political winds shift. We see massive crippling economic sanctions slapped on enemies, but quietly waived for allies who are committing the exact same offenses. We're talking about heads of state, formerly accused of war crimes, still being welcomed with literal red carpets at international summits. Weapons are continually sold to governments actively bombing civilian populations, and when the wrong people start getting investigated, suddenly, international courts are blocked or defunded. It's a precise, repeating cycle.
And this brilliantly illustrates the why behind it all. Understanding this machine is absolutely the first step to stopping it. The text identifies 4 structural pillars that serve as the underlying calculating drivers of these alliances. First up, economic interest. We are talking about billions of dollars in arms industries, energy contracts, and infrastructure deals. Governments follow the money, plain and simple. Second is military strategy. Securing a military base in the right country or creating a buffer against a rival power almost always overrides any human rights concerns at the negotiating table. Third is domestic politics. And this one is fascinating, if a bit cynical. Leaders will frequently sell weapons abroad specifically to protect manufacturing jobs back home, framing the support of an ally's war just as keeping our people employed. And finally, the fourth pillar, manufactured silence. This involves strictly controlling media access and diplomatic narratives to ensure atrocities never become headline news. Because at the end of the day, what people don't see, they definitely don't protest.
But here's the good news. None of this maneuvering is inevitable. It relies heavily on that fourth pillar, manufactured public silence. So how do we break it? Let's dive into the Citizen Toolkit and see how public pressure actually disrupts the geopolitical machine. The guide systematically outlines a step-by-step toolkit, and it starts right at the individual and local level. Step 1 is breaking the information wall. You've got to educate yourself by following independent investigative journalists rather than just state-aligned outlets, because, as they say, you cannot fight what you cannot see. Step 2, use your vote as a weapon. The source notes that politicians fear voters way more than they fear activists, but that's only if those voters are actually informed. So check a candidate's actual record on foreign policy and arms exports before casting a ballot. Step 3 is all about making noise. Governments will easily ignore what they think is a quiet minority. So organizing peaceful, highly visible protests creates a documented, unavoidable public record. And step 4 is countering the official narrative. We do this by fighting dehumanizing language and instead amplifying the actual testimonies of the victims affected by these policies, rather than just staring at cold statistics.
Moving from the local to the systemic, the guide details 3 final steps for global action, and these are grounded in a very pragmatic reality. Money and law are the languages that power truly understands. Step 5 is applying economic pressure. This literally means boycotting companies involved in these supply chains and divesting your personal savings or pensions away from funds that invest in arms manufacturers. Step 6 focuses heavily on international legal accountability. Laws only work if someone actually enforces them, right? So the text urges citizens to support universal jurisdiction cases and actively oppose any efforts to defund the International Criminal Court. And finally, Step 7, building global solidarity across borders. This means connecting directly with civil society groups in affected countries, asking them exactly what they need, and strictly avoiding those unhelpful savior narratives by just listening and following their lead.
Let's move to the timeline and see how this builds, because I know it is so easy to feel cynical about all of this. But the source uses concrete historical precedents to completely validate this toolkit. Back in the 1800s, it was relentless public pressure that finally ended the transatlantic slave trade. In the 1970s, mass public opposition severely impacted the political calculus of the Vietnam War. Fast forward to the 1980s, and global citizen boycotts helped economically cripple apartheid in South Africa. In 1997, widespread citizen campaigns directly led to the Ottawa Treaty banning landmines. And today, right now, ordinary people are the ones providing the crucial testimonies at international tribunals and the ICC. The text is very clear that none of these victories were fast, and absolutely none of them were easy, but they all started because citizens drew a line in the sand and fundamentally rejected the tired excuse of, well, that's just how geopolitics works.
Which brings us to the source's beautifully straightforward concluding thesis. Governments make alliances. Citizens make history. The core argument here is super empowering. The machine is not unbreakable. According to the text, every single time an unethical arms deal is blocked, every time a war criminal is successfully prosecuted, and every time an atrocity is dragged out of the shadows and into the light, it happens for one very specific reason. It happens because every day, ordinary citizens decided that their own government's diplomatic comfort was vastly less important than human life, and they completely refused to be complicit.
So, what does this all mean for us today? It leaves us with a pretty profound question to ponder as we wrap up this explainer. We've just seen the exact blueprint of how geopolitical alliances are formed, and we've explored the historical toolkit of how public pressure can actively tear them down. But looking forward, will informed voters and global solidarity fundamentally change how geopolitics operates in the 21st century? The machinery of international relations is massive. It is incredibly well-funded, and it's deeply entrenched. But, as the source material makes crystal clear, the one and only power governments actually fear is an informed, organized public. Thank you so much for joining